For the sake of the argument, let's say I'm designing a card game, and I need a card design for a character for whom death just doesn't stick. Maybe they are cursed to always come back to life, the pain of death fresh in their memory, they are locked in an endless cycle of violence of kill or be killed, or maybe they're just a baby phoenix. In any case, I might benefit from looking at how other card games represented these in gameplay, examples of interesting spins on the idea, and I look at how these interact with the core rules of these card games. I'm Simon from Games Deconstructed, and this is Cards That Don't Die When They Die. Now, to risk stating the obvious, for a card to fit what I've just described, it needs to do two things: die and then not be dead. This is to differentiate these from the narratively similar but mechanically distinct concepts of a character that's just immortal, or hard to kill, I guess, but without ever going through that death-rebirth cycle. A card like that might be better represented via keywords like indestructible or immune, effects like cannot be destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effects, or other defensive protection abilities. And the simplest possible design for a card that does fit our definition would look something like this. When this card dies, return it to the battlefield, full stop. It fits the criteria, it does die, it hits the graveyard, activates any on-death effects that it or other cards may care about, and then it returns to the same place it was last seen, it is alive. Now, if you're a Magic the Gathering enjoyer, you might already realize that, hey, Simon, this is probably a bad idea. Combined with any sort of free sacrifice outlet, this forms a 2-card infinite combo. To which I say, congratulations, we've finally found a way to break Altar of Dementia. Even in games where it doesn't have that possibility of going infinite, it's going to be quite a polarizing design. Combined with pretty much anything that allows you to sacrifice it multiple times for value, especially multiple times per turn, it's going to be immensely powerful. And if you use it quote-unquote fairly, as a blocker that comes back or a value trade engine, it's probably going to be meh. There's a large power differential between these two situations. There's also a lack of balance levers for the designers to pull to place the card somewhere in between these two extremes. And this doesn't bode well for the design. So most card games add a limitation to this effect. And these limitations will divide these cards for the purposes of this video into a couple categories. There's coming back at a cost, coming back when a condition is met, coming back after a delay, and coming back a limited number of times. And like the Magic the Gathering stock, let's proceed in last in, first out order. In MTG, this type of effect is represented via mechanics like Undying or Persist. When the creature resurrects, it returns with a +1/+1 or -1/-1 counter. If it already has one, it cannot resurrect again. Now, tying the condition to existing MTG mechanics in the form of these counters accomplishes a couple things at the same time. First, it presents an easy visual aid for which creatures can still be reborn. If we are playing against each other and for some untold reason I've played 4 young wolves, 2 of whom have already been resurrected, the presence of the +1/+1 counters on them allows you to easily recognize which are which from across the table, without needing to ask me or me needing to put the already spent ones to the side or anything like that. Alleviating this sort of mental bookkeeping is something MTG designers aimed for in many areas, and it's reasonably effective here as well. But it also creates some more interesting aftershock effects, as +1/+1 and -1/-1 counters are referenced in different gameplay contexts as well. This creates a wider web of interactions between Undying and anything that might care about +1/+1 counters, for example. In a quote-unquote fair scenario, Undying simultaneously wants to coexist with other mechanics that care about +1 counters, but it also kinda doesn't. Because if you put these on your creatures indiscriminately, as many of these +1 matters effects do, that turns off Undying. The creature will not be able to resurrect. However, since Magic has a huge card pool, you are way more likely to experience the interesting parts of Undying and Persist in the form of, once again, infinite combos. A card with either of these mechanics, plus something that prevents counters from being placed or puts the opposite type of counter since they cancel out, plus a sacrifice outlet, creates a situation quite similar to the hypothetical 2-card combo we discussed previously. Just that it's, 3 cards instead. And congratulations viewer, we broke Altar of Dementia again. You could accomplish the same idea without these after effects with a design like Bogardan Phoenix. When it dies for the first time, it comes back, you put a counter on it, if it has a counter, it can't res again, but it's not a type of counter that's often referenced elsewhere. Simpler, but not much to write home about in terms of being interesting. In Hearthstone, this category of self-revive effects is by far the most popular. Mostly due to it being an evergreen keyword, Reborn, which allows the creature to resurrect with 1 health upon dying exactly once. This one also has a clear visual indicator of whether the ability has already been used, and it's quite impactful on Death Rattle minions, allowing Death Rattles to be used twice. With the addition of Dark Gift effects in Into the Emerald Dream, there's an option of Reborn appearing randomly on all sorts of powerful Death Rattle cards. But this one is pretty much what it says on the tin, so let's look at different examples. Hearthstone also has cards that allow you to grant a creature this effect, like Ancestral Spirit. And while this might look like we are creating the hypothetical skeleton again, the resurrected minion will be treated as a new instance of a card, no longer having the Death Rattle. Is that clear from reading the card? Not to me, but it is what it is. But Hearthstone also utilizes its digital nature to introduce a spin on the same concept in a way that I enjoy a bit more, by having a minion like Rattlegore or Nesting Golem come back progressively weaker with every res. Tying the number of resurrections to the card's stats is a fun one. Could be accomplished in paper CCGs as well, I guess, adding progressively more -1/-1 counters to the card, though that may get a bit fiddly fast. But I especially enjoy the narrative expression here. With each death, the creature gets progressively weaker, either through depletion of the magical force that animates it, or just by its body getting wrecked, culminating in it becoming too weak for combat after absorbing enough pain. An example that's equally digital, but with another interesting implication, is Gwent's Morgvarg. Specifically the old design of Morgvarg, since they made him less interesting at some point. While similar on the surface to the Hearthstone examples, bear in mind that he also gets resummoned should he enter the graveyard via being milled or discarded. Both mechanics that Skellige, the faction that he's in, occasionally made use of. And while Gwent doesn't really have minion-to-minion combat, so it can't be used to trade multiple times like the Hearthstone critters did, because there's no real trading to speak of in the game, the round structure of Gwent involves a guaranteed board wipe at the end of each round, and there are 3 of them. So if you play Morgvarg round 1, he automatically comes back at the beginning of round 2 and possibly even 3, giving you immediate tempo without you needing to play a card. Which is a big deal in Gwent round 2s, by the way, for reasons I won't go into too much detail for. Our second category is coming back after a delay. I think Hearthstone's Dreadsteed is the most succinct expression of the idea. When it dies, it just comes back at the end of the turn. This one attempts to balance the infinite potential of the hypothetical skeleton by requiring a player to also have infinite time at their disposal, since each iteration of the death-rebirth loop requires a bit of time. Here's Yu-Gi-Oh's Revival Gem, which is a similar design to Dreadsteed, coming back from the dead at the beginning of your next turn instead, and also has an associated life point cost. Whereas MTG's Rekindling Phoenix accomplishes the same thing, but with extra steps, turning into an 0/1 elemental that resurrects it on your next upkeep, which allows your opponent to mess with it and thus stop the effect. This approach to the concept is a bit less shenanigan-prone, often on the weaker side than some of the other ones on the list, so we will be moving on. Our third category is coming back after a condition is met. This one also often appears on Phoenixes. I think my favorite example of this is MTG's Sunstreak Phoenix, since its text sounds like some sort of divine prophecy. When day becomes night, or night becomes day, you may pay 1 R to return Sunstreak to the battlefield tapped. Perhaps a better example would be the Bloodgust, which comes back from the graveyard whenever you play a land, or Arclight Phoenix, which comes back if you spam enough spells in a turn. Hearthstone's approach to the same concept is Thodi Belore, or Shirazin the Corpse Flower. The flavor for both is simple but effective. When it dies, it goes sleepy sleeps, and you need to charge it back up with energy for it to resurrect. But by far, my favorite card in this vein in Hearthstone is Recurring Villain. The flavor on this one is just so effective. If the villains had time to prepare, represented by him being buffed by 1 or more attack, it's going to show up again, as the name would suggest. For them to be gone for good, you'd need to corner them when they are unprepared, which is such a flavor win. The benefit of this type of design is that you can tie the condition to pretty much anything within your game. You can have creatures coming back when you learn, cycle, cascade, and these are just from going through the list of various MTG Phoenixes. It's a great modular design space that way, that allows me to create a great number of I sleep, real shit memes. And that can also reinforce the identity of an existing deck built around the mechanic that the condition is based on. A deck like Is It Phoenix is a spellslinger deck at heart, but the spell-slinging identity is reinforced by having up to 4 Arclight Phoenixes ready to kick your opponent's shit in time and time again as you spell-sling. Cards that come back at a cost are a popular one as well. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a 1001 place on this idea, but I think the one that appeals to me the most is Level Eater. It ties its self-res capabilities to the levels of your other monsters, and those change as a result of that cost being paid. This is such an interesting gameplay element to tie the cost to, and with the number of Yu-Gi-Oh! Mechanics that care about monster level in some capacity, Level Eater allows for a number of imaginative interactions that led it straight onto the forbidden list, because it allowed for slightly too impressive synchro loops as well. As MTG will show us, this category can be combined with other ones when needed. If you have a Phoenix that requires a condition to come back, it may also require a cost to be paid when that condition is met. This presents the designer with 2 separate balance levers for the effect on the card. The condition is one, the cost is another. I also feel like this effect has a slightly different mouthfeel. For cards like Reassembling Skeleton, where you can pay to return them to the battlefield at any time, it feels more like you, the player, are raising it again, rather than it resurrecting on its own. More like it has potential for resurrection, rather than an ability to. But this may very well be a distinction without difference, I don't know, feels different to me. And this entails some other super small considerations. For example, you the player have more control over the timing of these than some of the other categories, since depending on the phrasing of the effect, you can't just activate them whenever. I feel like all these approaches show that there's a wealth, and oh my god, why did I put this on my script? I'm an ESL speaker, I shouldn't be required to pronounce this. I feel like there's a wealth and breadth of mechanical approaches that reflect this narrative idea in equally interesting ways. Please note that we haven't covered cards that resurrect something else from the graveyard. I have a separate video for this. You can click the card on screen right now and it will open in a new window. Otherwise, let me know your favorite self-resurrecting cards in the comments. I've been Simon from Games Deconstructed. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you feel like it, and I hope to see you in the next one.